with one of my favorite quarterbacks ever, a guy that may or may not have been on one of my fantasy football teams back in the day, and he was throwing a lot of touchdown passes in that era. Pleasure to welcome to the show right now the great Jim Everett. Jim, how are you?
Hey, Professor Cobb, it's good to be with you, man. I'm telling you, if you want to win fantasy back, if you want to win fantasy back in the day, I was on your roster. We were chucking them.
I'm telling you, you're not kidding, baby. Airing it out. Get that
Yeah.
that late West Coast game on Sunday afternoon and watch you throw about 3 touchdown passes. That was a good afternoon for me back then.
Well, I'll tell you what, Ricky, it's a good timing because we just finished up I'm in a few different leagues, and I'm sure there's a bunch of other guys out there doing their fantasy drafts right now. I just got done finishing my last one. You're probably playing, but back in the day, people didn't realize we had to do this stuff by hand. I mean, we didn't have all these apps, and we didn't have all these, football guys help and all this other stuff. I guess that was a plug for them, but anyways, I think they're pretty good. But anyways, are you still playing, Ricky?
I'm not. I don't do it anymore. It's like I was in on it early. I was back before it became where like everybody you knew had a fantasy team. I was heavy into it. Now everybody does it and I don't. So I don't know what the up with that.
Well, you got to be committed because I mean, it's not for the weak right now. I'm telling you, if you're not committed to your fantasy team, to putting in the research, to putting in the time, I mean, because things change so much, the coordinators change. But man, I love it. So anyone out there, I know you just probably got done finishing your picks, getting ready for the big week, got the game tonight. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Anything that has people psyched up for football is a good thing. And Jim, look, you've been a Super 70s follower for a long time. I know you get the feed and you're hip to what I do. So let's bring up the poll of the day here. It's not going to be an official poll of the day until we get Jim Everett's vote accounted for. Today's options here, you can see Jim on the screen there. Led Zeppelin is running away with it, but I gave people the choice between Zeppelin, Hank Aaron, Burritos, and the Rockford Files. Go ahead and cast your ballot for us, Jim.
Man, I tell you what, I'm kind of a sports guy, even though, I mean, I like music, I like lead, I love to eat, I even like movies, but I'm going to we'll go with Hammer and Hank right here. I'm telling you, I'm just going to have to go because that dude was blowing him over the fence, and he was the guy. I mean, I think we hear the stuff about Babe Ruth, we hear Hank Aaron was like the man, and during that day, I guess, I don't know. Maybe he was juiced up. I don't know. Well, I don't know. I haven't heard steroids in Hank Aaron's name, like, Bobby. But anyways.
Yeah. I mean, some people think he's still the legitimate home run king, Jim, because he wasn't on the juice. Maybe some amphetamines. Maybe a few amphetamines, if we're being honest.
You and I both know this. He could have been on the juice. We just wouldn't know it in this day and age. There's too much to know now. I mean, everyone's in everyone else's business. But back in the day, you could probably get by. I mean, aren't you glad they didn't have cameras back in the day, Ricky?
Oh man, yeah. I mean, it's a whole different world, dude. How would you feel playing in the NFL today with like the X and Instagram and everything? Like, I mean, you played almost it wasn't that long ago, but it's almost like prehistoric times, compared to the technology of what today's athletes deal with.
Okay, Ricky, I love this point, and let's go down this road for a second, because right in the 90s was a big change. We had local reporters, and then all of a sudden after the 90s, we had national reporters, USA Today, Sporting News, all these different things. So there was a lot of competition for the drama, I mean, like we had a magazine called The Inquirer, and you'd sell at the grocery store. It was talking about aliens and all this different crazy stuff, but it sold. But it kind of got to sports that way. You would know your local reporter. You'd actually go out and have a beer with them. You could tell your side of the story. He wouldn't use your name. You kind of had this relationship, right? And then all of a sudden, when the national reporters came in, and that was like early 90s, then it was like there was no more loyalty. What can I dig? What can I find out about this guy? What kind of news? What is there Martians over at Ricky's house? I mean, it's just crazy stuff that's starting happening. But it's sold. And that's what we said. As a matter of fact, I look at the LA Times now or the New York Times, and they're still writing about aliens. I swear, I think that stuff has been more propaganda than would go on.
Yeah, I remember Bat Boy. He was on the cover of something. Man, you go through the grocery checkout, and there'd be like 6 of them. It was the Inquirer, the Star, the World News and Globe Report, or whatever they were. Well, look, Jim, you're hip to Twitter, obviously. Here's one of your tweets. I tweet, you tweet, and here's one that you tweeted, quoting the great Fred Dreyer, Hunter himself. Yeah. That's the brand right there, man. Like when you played for the Rams, and look, the Deacon Jones, Merlin Olsen, Roman Gabriel era uniforms are classic as well. So shout out to those uniforms. But man, like the way the Rams looked when you were with the Rams is, in my opinion, how the Rams should still look. Are we in full agreement on that?
I think we're in full agreement, Ricky. I really do. I mean, Fred had a point. There's the brand. The helmets were the first one, that were kind of designed. The Ram helmet, the way they structured the horn, they painted it on. But I'm telling you, being with the equipment guys with the Rams, I know it was a pain in the butt as far as having to fix putting that horn on all the time. Now let's fast forward to 2024. And they've got they got the new horn, they've got and I kind of agree. If you go to SoFi Stadium, and that's kind of the key thing. If you're just a visitor and you're far away, you haven't seen, but all the digital advertising they do with the circular horn and all that stuff, it fits, it works at the stadium. And the fact that they came back to LA, I think they needed to do a little bit of a rebrand to get some of the young guys, targeting that 10-year-old audience. So I'm not opposed to it. I mean, I looked at the 1950s Ram thing, and that thing is kind of old too. So freshen up, and I think it's good for all the teams. But I might be in the minority, but I like the fact that the NFL likes to sell a lot of stuff. So if they keep it new, it makes people buy more stuff.
Yeah, why not? Why not sell both, right? With the throwbacks, and they won a Super Bowl in that uniform. So hey. I thought about you yesterday, Jim. Let's put this tweet up because I remembered you responded. I had tweeted this some time back, and I was sort of glorifying the era of this stuff right here. And I remember you responded. This is maybe a couple of years ago, and you were like, "Yeah, well, you didn't play on it." What was it like going out there and playing on the infield, Jim?
All right, so there's so first of all, when I'm coming back and I'm running Ernie Zampese's offense, which is the same stuff Dan Fouts and Troy Aikman ran, you're on a timing offense. So when you come back and plant, you need to hit like you're pitching off the rubber. And when you come back and sometimes you're hitting grass and sometimes you're coming back and hitting dirt. I'd look back there and see, but I'll tell you, Ricky, nothing was as bad as the seams in Houston Astrodome. I mean, those were like 2-inch gaps, and you'd go out and blow an ankle coming back and trying to back. But going back to the dirt, it was unpredictable, but it worked out pretty good. I mean, for us, because we kind of knew what was going to go on. And then what they would do is somewhere around after October, and the Angels weren't in season anymore, they would come back and put sod down. Now, it looked good from the stands, but that sod was loose as heck. And so it's now you'd come back, and rather than planting in dirt or planting in, real good infield, you're planting on some sort of sod mush. I remember Doug Smith dropping snapping a ball in it, and the ball got caught up in the turf right near the goal line. Because if you saw that one picture. The first baseline was kind of like near the goal line, but I don't know. I just can't see fans sitting, paying what they're paying now and sitting at an angle watching the seats. So I was coming from the Big Ten. We had great stadiums. We had this, and then all of a sudden I go to the pros and I'm playing in baseball stadiums. I'm like, what the heck is this? It was like the Big Ten had better stadiums.
And as you said, the AstroTurf era, right? Like Veteran Stadium, people talk, how it was notoriously, and you can see it. Like if you see an aerial shot of Veteran Stadium from the 80s, you can just see it. There's little squares here and little squares there, and they don't match. It's just so
they're not one would be up a little bit higher than the next one. And trust me, when you're running around and you're not paying attention, shuffling your feet. I remember diving one time because my foot hit it and no one was around. But it happened. But that's just the name of the game. Now, also realize we didn't have field turf at the time. Matter of fact, when we were in the quarterback club, we were one of the first entities that invested in field turf, which is the grass, the fake grass with the rubber inlay. The turf that we played on was like your living room carpet. So when you're going high speed and then you're taking a dive on the carpet, trust me, your elbows and everything else were just trash. So and then what people don't realize is on the turf is it was mounded so that the water would go down on the sides. Now, the cool thing about playing in a baseball field was that it was completely flat. And that what people don't realize. But I'd go to New York and all of a sudden you'd be 2 feet higher than your receiver on the side because they had to have water drain off that field. And so that you had to take that into account. The new turf, it drains through it and they have a system underneath. So, I mean, it's evolved as much as the NFL has.
Well, I mean, you played on some less than ideal playing surfaces, but you never played in Brazil. What do you make of the NFL being in Brazil? Nothing says Packers Eagles like Brazil to me, Jim. What do you make of this game being played over there?
Well, the fact that it may be cooler because it's wintertime or fall or whatever, or springtime over there, that would be a blessing because it's hot as heck right here in Cali. But, I was one of the teams that we played preseason. We were the first one to play in Germany. We were the first one to play in London. Matter of fact, we played there twice. And then we were the first one to play in Japan. So I kind of get the international game. It's a full commitment, but to have it this time in the season and then all the travel, it's a big ask from your equipment man and your logistics guys and your play. Because then you got to come back and get ready for another game. That's a far drive, Ricky. That's a far drive.
All right, Jim. I've got another tweet here I want to put up. I'm going tweet heavy with you today because I know you're a Twitter guy. Pull this up. This is the NFL. I guess it was the era when you and the other great quarterbacks would get together and throw on your Zubaz pants. Or whatever, at least some of them, right? And
that was
just
all right.
hang out.
Let me tell you real quick.
Yeah,
this is called the quarterback club. That's who I referred to earlier, where we made an investment in field turf, where the union decertified, and we came up with this. Us 12 or 13 quarterbacks, and this is called the quarterback club. And what we did is we represented the top 40 guys in the NFL because the union at the time was doing our marketing rights. And so what they would end up doing is they would take a guy like Dan Marino and put on shirts, and then take John Elway and put on shirts. And then the union would be like, oh, well, we had 35 guys, but those are individual shirts. So we got our rights back. And so what we did is basically we funded Brett Favre and all these different guys so that they would get their piece of the pie. That still goes on now. It's just the NFL and the union now are cohorts, and they got us out of that position. But we basically forced the NFL to have our individual rights, and so that we could make a percentage off that. And so this group right here, is as strange as they look like in Zubas and this and that, they were pioneers, and I was glad to be part of that. And the union now and the NFL are step locked. It wasn't always that way, and we had to force it. And this group right here was bold enough to take that step to go out and say, hey, we want our rights, and it's still working today.
And if we could go back, if we could put that up one more time, what's up with Phil Sims? Is Sims giving you a back rub there, Jim?
Yeah,
He's getting a little familiar there.
Yeah, he's getting a little close. But if you want to look real close down here, Phil's a good guy. I mean, but I get to wear a shirt with myself on it. I don't know how many times, Ricky, you've got to run around with your shirt with Ricky on the front of it, but it's a rare occasion. But I mean, I like your graphics. I guess you could probably get away with it.
Yeah, I mean, that might be the best thing to come out of this for me is I could join that exclusive club of men who have achieved the stature that they can pull off wearing their own shirt. That's a boss move, Jim. It takes brass balls to pull that off, and you did it.
I don't know. I was like, really? I mean, I still have a couple, but it's not like I run them around the neighborhood and stuff like that. But I think Jimmy Harbaugh would still wear his.
Yeah, Harbaugh. He's probably wearing one today.
Right, underneath his Charger gear.
All right, Jim, you know where I want to go. I cannot have you on this program and not talk about one of the greatest days in American history. As you know, I've tweeted about it multiple times. Sometimes I like to tweet about it on the anniversary. April 6, 1994, you perform one of the greatest public services in the history of American culture. You shut Jim Rome's mouth. Let's talk about the glorious day that you made Jim Rome your bitch by going across that table, and finally you'd had enough. Jim, so I want to set the stage here. And I know you've talked about this and you've talked about it at length before, but I kind of want to have the definitive interview here. Can you give me the context? When did Jim Rome decide that he wanted to be a thorn in your side? And how long was the build up for it to get to this moment?
Okay, so Ricky, all good questions. At the time, Jim was down in San Diego, I think, on some Mighty 690 or whatever radio, and he came up with the Chris comments, and that started, I don't know, probably 1990. I mean, probably, we had a really good season, 88, 89. We fell off in 90. Then all of a sudden, Jim started his stuff, 91. And so was a buildup from that. The show that you see here is ESPN2. That was brand new. Matter of fact, when my agent called me and said, "Hey, we got you set up with ESPN," I thought I was going to go see Roy Firestone. I don't know if you remember that guy, but really good interview.
I would have been, far different vibe from Roy.
Yeah. I just got traded to the Saints. I did this, and then all of a sudden, and then I show up at the show, and he's like, "Oh, you're going to be with this," and I'm like, "Okay." So I was not prepared for any of it, and so they gave me a little background saying, "Hey, we're going to skip around, and we're going to do the Chris thing," and I'm like, "Hey, as long as it's all in good spirit, I'm good with that." And then let's move on because I want to talk about the Saints. I want to talk about my future and where we're going, and then he just wouldn't get off it, and I was like, how many times I told him, and I'll put this right up here, you better take a station break. I got those on Amazon.
Oh, dude. All right. Are those, okay. I started to say, are those available somewhere online? Because
they are available on Amazon.
Okay. I'm buying one, but proceed, sir.
Anyway, so we get into the middle of it, and they said we were touch on, and then I was shocked. I mean, you could see from my reaction. I'm like, "Hey, this is like, all right, this is cool, but let's move on to the next thing." And he just wouldn't get off it. And I actually said, "Hey, you want to take a station break?" I mean, I'm like, what more can I do? And then he kept going. So yeah, that was it. Afterwards, I didn't. He actually fell off the stage. The stage was like 18 inches high or 12 inches high because all the cables under it, and then he just curled up like a rabbit. And so I'm like, I can't really do anything to him. He's already out. I'm just like, but that was it. And so there was, at the time, he was starting his new show, and I think they even canceled the show for 6 months, and then he came back and he was bigger than ever. So at one point in time, Jim Rome was making $30 million a year on TV doing his stuff, and so I mean, what he was doing was getting some attention. So I can't say that that was after, remember the 90s we just talked about earlier about all the national coverage and this and the Martians and the aliens. And so this whole thing started stemming from how far can we move the needle out, where before it would be like, hey, let's have respect for Gordie Howe, let's have respect for Michael Jordan at the time, or Bo Jackson or whatever. And then Jim was the flip side. He's like, who can I mess with? And that was his stick, and it actually worked for him. And so kudos to him to making that work.
I will never forget the moment that I heard about it. My buddy Pete went to University of Indiana. I lived in Kentucky at the time. He was coming down to visit, and I heard about it on Sports Center. And I remember Craig Kilborn from Sports Center. They were teasing it when they came back, and Craig Kilborn says, Jim Everett smacks the smack boy straight ahead. And they played a clip of it, and I'm like, holy shit, there you are standing over him. And I'm like, oh my God, this is like the greatest thing I've ever seen. Like, what has, you and Jim Rome are like, you're like fucking Dennis Eckersley and Kirk Gibson. You're forever tied in history, like it or not. What have the interactions been or not been with Jim Rome in the 30 years since this momentous occasion?
There really has been, it was back and forth. Did he apologize? No, he didn't. Did he? And then finally, I would say about 10 years ago, he finally said, hey, that was a mistake and this and that. And so I get it. And I get where he was coming from, because our team wasn't winning at the time, and you blame the quarterback and you blame me. And I could have played better at times too. So, I mean, I get the whole thing of it. It was just amped up so much. There was a commercial we were looking at doing, and it was going to pay a good six figures. He turned it down, and I'm like, are you kidding me? And so I'm like, I'm kind of open to that, and I would reach out on Professor Cobb's show right now and say, Jim, let's do something together, because this is too much fun to make it not profitable. I mean, and so I would be way open to doing something with him and Chris Everett. I don't know. I think that it would be a wonderful thing to let bygones be bygones, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it worked for Bo Jackson and Brian Bosworth. The commercials that they did together, was really funny. It's been 30 years. All right, Jim Rome, the offer is out there on the table. All right, so the ball's in your court, Romey.
I mean, Jim, I don't want to have to work on something in heaven. Come on, Ricky.
Yeah. Jim, I got to say this. I want to bring in my buddy Ronnie T-shirts, if we can get him in here. Can we do that? Ronnie is an Ohio State Buckeye enthusiast, and I don't know if we'll be able. There he is. And he's not even prepared for this. But
I am not.
Jim, you are the only Purdue quarterback to ever beat Ohio State, Michigan, and Notre Dame, all three in the same season, which you did in 1984. Now, here's my question for you. Now, look behind Ronnie there. We got Buckeye stuff everywhere. Right here in front of Ronnie, whose fans are more obnoxious and annoying, Michigan or Ohio State?
Wisconsin. I swear to God, it was Wisconsin. At the time, they were serving alcohol in the stands in Wisconsin. I only up in Wisconsin they do that, and I barely dodged a Jack Daniels bottle. So I'm telling you, the fans there are crazy. You would come out on the field, and they had this. They actually had like this net above, so that the bottles and stuff. But you would just get doused with beer coming out on the field in Wisconsin. So while I respect Michigan and Ohio State fans for their enthusiasm and their winning ways, I don't think you can match the craziness that happens up there with the Badgers.
How about that? It's Wisconsin.
You know what? I appreciate you having my back, Jim. Do you remember if the game, unfortunately, I don't remember every game. So that was my freshman year. 84 was my freshman year. Do you remember if the game was in West Lafayette or was it in Columbus?
Oh, I remember it well. I can tell you the plays and tell you the audibles that I used to get those touchdowns. It was at West Lafayette.
Okay, so I wasn't there. All right.
Wait. You had a quarterback that was a freshman. You might remember Mike Tomczak.
Well, should I tell him, Ricky?
Yes, tell him. Jim. You just unwittingly walked into a story that Ronnie likes to tell about 5 times a year. So go ahead and tell Jim Everett your Mike Tomczak story.
I need it.
All right, Jim. So my athletic achievements, not real good. I scored 6 points my varsity career playing basketball in high school. That's it. So what it would have been 1985. So the Bears won the Super Bowl in the Bears won the Super Bowl in 1986, right?
Yeah, 85 season, 86 Super Bowl. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I was at the Student Rec Center playing basketball, and it was about 2 weeks after the Super Bowl. And I was playing I was playing pickup, and I was playing against Mike. Mike brought some weak shit in on a layup, and I threw it back to half court. And that is my coup de grace of athletic achievements.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
Hey, everybody's got to have something, right? That's mine.
Did you say anything to him afterwards?
Probably not. I think he was probably embarrassed that some pudgy, non-athletic kid threw his shit to half court after he just played in the Super Bowl.
I know you said get that shit out of here. I know you said it. Come on. All right.
Did you give him the Matumbo finger, Ronnie?
I did.
You know? Yeah. Hey, no.
So Mike Tomczak, we're playing, and I think we won by 3 points or whatever. But they've got the ball. If they go down, they can kick the ball to tie it, and score as they get a touchdown. They win it, and so anyways, Mike Tomczak's moving the ball down the field. They get about at the 50-yard line, and I don't know, second down, third down, whatever. It's fourth down, and Mike forgets what down it is. Now he's still a freshman, right? So on fourth down, he plants the ball on the ground to stop the clock. We're looking around going, hey, it's fourth down. You just spiked it. And we get the ball back. That's how we win the game against Ohio State. So you stuff him, he stuffs himself. So there we go.
Yeah, he was basically he was Chris Webber before Chris Webber.
I feel bad. Tomczak is a Super 70 Sports follower too.
Oh, we got to get him on here.
What? Maybe we need to get him on here. I feel bad about the Mike Tomczak slander that's occurring today. I'm the only person who doesn't have a humiliating Mike Tomczak story on today's show. Poor guy. He's got that ring, baby. He was the original number 18. Caleb Williams is wearing Mike Tomczak's number.
I can't believe it's not retired.
I know. Why is Tomczak not in the Ring of Honor? This is getting worse by the minute, Mike. If you see this, Mike, I am genuinely sorry. Jim, you were talking about the piss poor quality of the turf at the Astrodome, and a lot of people forget you were drafted by the Houston Oilers.
Yeah,
number 3 when you came out, and they obviously they had Warren Moon at that time, who was still, maybe he had played a couple of seasons after leaving the CFL. Right. What was that process like? I mean, did you think that you were going to land in Houston, or was it always a situation where you thought you would be redirected elsewhere?
So I think before my era, 3 years before me was John Elway, where he held out. Like, I think he got drafted by Indianapolis and they moved him. So I think then after myself, I was drafted by Houston totally as trade bait. So, I mean, there's no two ways about it. They were either going to trade Warren Moon, and there was rumors they were going to move him to the Raiders, or they were going to trade me, because I had a deal with, they had the 3rd pick, and the 4th pick was Indianapolis Colts, and they needed a quarterback. Well, I already had a contract set with the Colts, and I knew exactly what I was going to make. Now, was that legal at the time? No, but my agent was pretty crafty. And so Houston said, no, we're going to take, because I don't know if you guys remember, but Indianapolis moved from back in the draft up to the 4th pick, and then Houston got mad going, why didn't you move up to the 3rd pick? Because we're going to take him. And Indianapolis said, no, we're not going to do it. So there was all this jockeying for draft picks. So anyways, make a long story short, Houston took me just to piss off Indianapolis. And then they only offered me half of what Indianapolis ever offered me, and they tried to put everything in. And of course, I wasn't going to say anything about that. But the thing about the era, Ricky, that I like now, and you brought up X and you brought up social media. If I would have had a voice to be able to say, hey, this isn't fair. This is this, and I would at least got to get my point out. Well, Lad Herzog was the general manager for Houston. And he was saying Everett's being greedy, Everett's being this. And I didn't have a media guy in my camp to get my story out going, hey, I was drafted to be traded like a piece of meat. And so, Ricky, I really like the fact that players can say stuff. And when they do, I listen to it on Twitter. And that's one of the reasons why I like the social media is you get a different vibe than maybe what is being pumped out either by the team or being pumped out. So all the stuff that we're seeing political or this or that, I get it because it's only one voice. I like the voice of the person it's affecting. And so that's why I'm a big follower on it. And I listen to the players, and it's really interesting. But anyways, that was a story about being drafted. I was happy to be drafted by a team so early, but it was really weird. My first thing with professional football being used as trade bait. That was really tough for a 22-year-old kid.
Jim, take a look at this tweet that we got up here. Fuck the Niners hats. That's a good look right there, man. You get yourself a Jim Everett shirt going, throw on a fuck the Niners cap. I need to get outfitted like that for an episode of this program at some point. I'll do this show wearing a Jim Everett t-shirt and a fuck the Niners cap, Jim.
There we go. I think it should go nationwide. Seriously, I was promoting it, but if you saw the tweet, I was talking to our mascot. And I like to mess with the mascot, especially when it's some. If you see Rampage up there, he's the guy that wears the horns that runs around, and Alex is a great dude. Anyways, so I was just kind of messing with him, going, I could see the mascot wearing the hat, and I was just trying to visualizing that. I thought it was kind of cute.
Well, Jim, look, I mean, I'm sure, obviously, that you're a student and an interested observer of the quarterback position, right? I mean, you're not just a student. I mean, you're a professor of that. When you look at the game today, are there any guys out there in the NFL that you particularly enjoy watching? And are there any guys that remind you, I guess I'll ask you this, who in the NFL today has the most Jim Everett in him when you watch him play?
Man. Oh man, that's a fun question because I was looking at, if I would have answered that a long time ago, I'd say Matt Ryan was a little bit similar back in the day. I think right now you look at a guy like Josh Allen, who's got a lot of talent, a lot more physical talent because he can runs 4'6", 4'7", but he's a big guy, and you don't see that. Now, when I say the evolution of the quarterback position, and I love the game today, I love the rule changes because they were trying to knock us out of the game. And so I think the NFL got wise to that, going, listen, these guys are making 50, 60 million a year. We can't have them on the sideline. So let's protect them, and let's protect the receivers. So I think that part's really, really good. But what I'll say is quarterbacks during our era had to be like first basemen or outfielders. They had to be kind of strong and sturdy to be hanging in the pocket, even surviving. Warren Moon, we talked about him earlier, was on the smaller side, but he, at least was quick. Nowadays, if we want to put it in baseball terms, I see quarterbacks being more like shortstops or second basemen, guys that can, the Mahomes of the world. If I look back in our era, Rob Johnson was a guy that could have really been well in that system, but rather than he got hurt so much because our rules were different. So I really like watching Patrick Mahomes. I really like Allen. I'm really curious to see the young talents that are coming out. I think the quarterback position is in good hands. And I'll leave this up. I think Matthew Stafford, and I'll go there, takes a lot of abuse as far as his national recognition. That dude is good. He's got a good arm. He's got a great head. His look-off throws in the Super Bowl were probably some of the best throws I've ever seen, be able to manipulate the secondary, and he's smart. But he doesn't ever get the credit, at least nationwide, because he played, 12 years for a Lions franchise. that really was going nowhere. So, kudos to him to come out and get himself a Super Bowl, and much respect.
Yeah, that's I think he's a Hall of Famer. I would go so far as to say that Matthew Stafford is a Hall of Famer with that Super Bowl win. Because as you said, he was really just out of the spotlight because of playing in Detroit for so long.
He was, and he had Calvin, that was a big time player. But look at the receivers he has this year. He's got and he's got a third round. He's got a fifth round. He's got and his other third receiver is an unrestricted or was a free agent. So, I mean, it's not like he's Williams in Chicago, which we talked about earlier, that's got all these top draft picks and all this talent. I mean, Cooper Kupp's good. Don't get me wrong, third round pick, but it's not like they invested. Les Snead's done a great job. Then they got Whittingham, who's a sixth round, who's the fourth guy. So they've done a great job picking up guys, but between him and McVay and the system that they're doing, they're putting people in advantageous positions, even though they're not a bunch of first-round draft picks. But I think he does a good job with the guys around. Puka's doing great. Cooper Kupp's doing great. But again, Les Snead found these guys later in the draft, which is pretty amazing.
Well, Jim, my only regret is that we don't have more time today. So I hope that you'll come back on down the road. I hope we get you back on and we can continue this conversation because it's been a pleasure.
Hey, I had to ask one thing. Did you guys vote for Led Zeppelin?
Burritos.
Ron voted for burritos.
Why am I not surprised?
Yeah, my producer voted for Led Zeppelin, and I got to agree with you. I got to go with Hammer and Hank.
There we go. All right.
Yeah.
Ricky, I'd love to come back on.
Jim.
Thanks.
All right, man. We will do it for sure. Thank you, my brother, and have a great day.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, OutKick fans on YouTube. If you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe button and make your way over to OutKick.com where you can watch the full episode.